Hello, I am Ilona, and today I want to talk about fish because, yes, fish was also a very important part of hunter gatherers' diet, ancient people diet, and even today's people diet. And also, I found some kind of interesting connections between fish and one specific fish and a hook with which you catch a fish. And few of these fishes are looks like these words are much older than any known now proto languages existed, like Proto-Uralic or Proto-Indo-European, which makes sense because people were catching fish since very ancient times, and they did had names for these fish. And there are some specific fish which lived in specific areas and not in other areas. So some people didn't know about this fish existence, but some did. And for example, let's start with salmon. In Latvian, we call it lasis. When you look at Finnish and Estonian verbs, Northern Sami, Swedish, Norwegian, and Russian, and Polish, and German, these words are too similar. I can clearly see a connection here, and that is the extraordinary distribution. We have the same word, or very related forms of the same word across Baltic, Finnic, Samic, Germanic, Slavic mm, languages. And where does this word come from? What does it mean? Mainstream explanation proposed that um, that Latvian lassis comes from the Latvian word lasse, drop or speckle. First of all, the problem is okay. That could maybe explain Latvian if this was a fish name only in Latvian like that. But how that explain? I don't know. Sami. What is the real origin of lasses? Well, who knows? No one knows. But there is no convincing Indo-European etymology. And as you can see, there is this connection through so many languages. So, and also borrowings don't convince me at all. So this is either, and not just either, most likely from the word which survived from these Mesolithic fishing people who been living in that area, and they gave the name to the fish. And what, for me personally, mostly points to that is this Sami connection. Yes, because these are quite very far northern peoples with quite conservative language and culture, and with not a lot of contacts actually. Herring is silke in Latvian, and again you can see that there is this seal, very similar. Obviously, these are all same word, and again in a lot of languages. But there is another name like this herring name, which is more in Germanic languages. What would be the standard assumption? Which is weird that Baltic and Finnic peoples, borrowed it from Germanic. In Germanic languages, this is different word. And actually, this herring cluster is also maybe ancient, also unexplained. Also could be belonging to this North Sea coastal fishing population of Western Europe. Eel is interesting, but eel, yes, from Latvian side there is nothing actually. The explanation Zootis is like from Zeus. I think this explanation is kind of weird because why would you call a least fish-looking fish just generic fish word? In other languages, there is this ungang something very very close. Looks like again from the even in Basque. Mm, angler. Okay. We have two words here if we exclude Latvian Zutis. Eel something part and ang something part. First of all, there is the explanation of angi meaning snake, but for me it doesn't make any sense because first of all, snake word for snake itself in Indo-European language, not just in actually in almost all languages. There are so many names for it. Like each language made their own word, and you would think, but it's a snake, one of the most ancient animals. You would give a name for it, and it would stay the same. But that is the thing. And what makes it problematic to call eel a snake? Because snake most likely was this taboo word which you don't use. You usually replace it with other word to not attract snakes, and you cannot call a fish a snake. That feels like wrong. Another thing is that also you have to distinguish a fish from a snake because there is a difference if you catch eel or if you catch a snake, because in some situations it can be dangerous, but also some fish yes, some snakes do swim, but some snakes also were this kind of like very sacred spiritual animals, so you wouldn't eat it. How anki is a snake if it's anchor and angler? Am I going crazy here? The problem here is what? First of all, Basque. Yes, they could take this word from Greek or other Indo-European speaking peoples around them. There are a lot of them. Uh, but I don't know. I cannot talk about something that I don't know. But another problem is again for like Baltic and Finnic people. They had Germanic peoples in between them, and they have a completely different word for it. There is no connection between Finnish people and Greek. That's why it looks very weird way of borrowing, if it is a borrowing. Okay, about lamprey, at first I thought, Negis, that's something interesting. It's so very different and what it could mean. But then I realized and I looked at these Germanic words, nine eye, and clearly see that Negis comes from this word. Even if these fish kind of creature, they are not fish, first of all. They are not fish. The most interesting thing about them is that the fact that they are not fish. But their name is quite boring and nothing special. And despite that this creature is as a food, it's a part of Latvian food culture. We don't have our original name for it, except yes, in some local variations, it is called deviņacis, yeah, deviņace. Also, why deviņas why nine eyes? Because of these things. They look like eyes, but those are not eyes. In reality, they don't have so many eyes. Maybe it is possible that it was really called something connected to eyes and nine eyes. Because also in Finnish and Estonian, isn't it something like that? Also, similar word to eyes. So that is a distinctive feature for this creature, and people clearly noticed it. And maybe in this case, the simplest and the most obvious explanation is how it was named. Nothing really special here. Perch, asaris, freshwater fish, and in Latvian supposedly it comes from us, which is sharp, and that's yes, another very simple, straightforward, descriptive naming for a fish. Yeah, yeah, I understand that sometimes with something looks very straightforward, very simple. It's not always like that. So it can be sometimes misleading. So you have to be, of course, also careful with that. But as I don't know another explanation for it, then probably, probably because there is a problem with asaris for a fish. And if we say yes, when you touch it, it's sharp. So as sharp makes sense. But at the same time, in Latvian there is this word asara, which is a tear when you cry. And you could say, but maybe the name it's even closer. Asaris is even closer to Asara than to us. Uh, Maybe you touch this fish, it's sharp and it's painful, and you cry because yeah, you see how it can sometimes be ridiculous when you use the most obvious words, descriptive words. You can actually apply a lot of things, a lot of words and find similar words if you want to find them. Uh, but okay, maybe there is anyway. There is at this point I don't see anything really special with this one. What I do see special is a pike. Again, in Latvian, Lithuanian, probably also something like that. Baltic languages have their own word for this. But what we see again here, Finnish and Estonian, again, Finnic branch, they have their own word for this. And then we have Germanic, which looks very similar to Finnish. And then we have a word hook. And then if you think about pike, you cannot catch it just with hands or with something. You need a bite, you need a hook. You have to put this bite on the hook and catch it. For my own experience, when you catch fish, sometimes you can use different types of fish catching techniques, like nets, the most obvious ones. Or we did also this kind of like you have this big bucket, you put some kind of something to attract some specific fish, and after some time that bucket will be full of fish. Yes, it's literally, yes, it works. Of course, you need to know if there is no fish, it will not work, but you need to know where you use it. This will not work with pike. And first of all, most likely it will not go in the bucket. But if you will catch it with net, you have to be very careful. Why? Because they have very sharp teeth. And they do, if it will bite your finger, it will hook on it, literally. And removing it, oh, and that will be really painful and can lead to infections and everything. So handling a pike had to be uh, not the same as other fish, okay? And catching techniques were clearly different. And here's this connection with the hook. For me, it looks like there is a connection. Now, if we think about hunter-gatherers and farmers, who do you think could have bigger vocabulary for fishing-related activities? My opinion, hunter-gatherers, obviously, it's not like, okay, I am not saying that farmers didn't catch a fish. Most likely they did. But they were busy with farming, and farming is really, you don't have much spare time, and fishing sometimes involves, well, fishing can be time consuming. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.